Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to make an announcement. The voice of my husband, Ryan Carter, cut through the hum of conversation, instantly drawing attention. The setting? A lavish anniversary party at the Astoria, one of New York's most exclusive restaurants. The occasion? 12 years of marriage. The atmosphere? Warm, elegant, filled with laughter and the clinking of wine glasses. But this wasn't part of the plan. I set down my wine glass, my fingers resting lightly on the stem, and turned toward him. Ryan stood at the head of the long banquet table, his stance confident, his expensive blazer fitting him perfectly. He was always good at looking the part, like the ideal husband, the successful coach, the man in control. But what really caught my eye wasn't his polished appearance. It was the thick envelope in his hand. A subtle hush fell over the room as guests exchanged puzzled glances. I could almost hear the collective intake of breath, the quiet anticipation hanging in the air. Ryan exhaled theatrically, as if what he was about to say required great courage. Then, he turned to me, his voice calm, deliberate. "Olivia, we've had 12 incredible years together. But I think it's time for us to go our separate ways. I've found someone who truly understands me. I want my freedom." The weight of his words settled like a heavy fog over the room. For a split second, silence stretched between us. Then, the whispers began. I didn't need to turn my head to know what was happening. I could feel the shift in the air. Our friends, our colleagues, my business associates, they were shocked. Some looked horrified, others intrigued. A few discreetly raised their phones, recording what they clearly sensed was about to be a public spectacle. Ryan was savoring this moment. He thought he had the upper hand. Slowly, he placed the envelope on the table in front of me and slid it across, his fingers lingering as if emphasizing his control over the situation. Divorce papers. Right here. Right now. I glanced at the envelope, then back at him. His posture was relaxed, self-assured. His expression smug, like a man who believed he had orchestrated the perfect coup. He expected me to react, to cry, to plead, to lash out in a fit of anger and humiliation. He wanted to watch me break. What he didn't know was that I had already seen this coming. I picked up my wine glass, swirling the deep red liquid inside, watching as it caught the light. I took my time, letting the moment stretch, feeling Ryan's impatience flicker beneath his mask of confidence. Then, I smiled. The kind of smile that made the whispers stop. That made people lean in, confused. That made Ryan hesitate for the first time that evening. I set my glass down, tilting my head ever so slightly. How interesting. My voice was steady, controlled. I reached for the envelope, flipping it open without urgency, scanning the pages. Then, I lifted my eyes to meet his. You really thought I didn't know? For the first time, Ryan's confident facade cracked. A flicker of something crossed his face, hesitation, doubt, maybe even fear. Because he had just realized one very important thing. I was already ahead of him. And the game had only just begun. I let the divorce papers rest on the table, my fingers lightly tracing the edge of the crisp white sheets. Ryan was still standing, his smug expression faltering just slightly, but he recovered quickly. He had planned this moment, after all. He had envisioned me falling apart, stammering, maybe even begging him to reconsider. He wanted the power, the control, the satisfaction of knowing he had shattered me in front of an audience. But I had no intention of giving him what he wanted. I exhaled slowly, not in shock or sadness, but in quiet amusement. You're right, Ryan, I said, my voice smooth, unshaken. It is time for us to go our separate ways. I watched as his eyebrows twitched ever so slightly, not expecting me to agree so effortlessly. He was waiting for the outburst, the heartbreak, the tears. Instead, I lifted my wine glass again, taking a slow sip, letting the silence stretch long enough for the tension to thicken. The whispers around us grew louder, people exchanging glances, trying to make sense of my reaction. Ryan shifted on his feet. Olivia, he said, his voice forced into a tone of false sympathy, I know this must be hard for you. But I need to be honest with myself. And with you. His hand brushed against the papers on the table, as if to reinforce his decision. I want to do this the right way. We can split everything fairly. I almost laughed at the audacity. Split everything fairly? He actually believed he was entitled to half of what I had built, half of what I had worked for while he chased his midlife crisis fantasy. I placed my glass down and folded my hands in my lap, tilting my head slightly. You mean, you want half of what's mine, I corrected, watching as the muscles in his jaw tensed. Ryan sighed, playing the role of the reasonable man dealing with an emotional wife. Olivia, we built a life together. You wouldn't be where you are without me. That was when I truly smiled, because now, I knew exactly where this was going. I had been prepared for this moment for months. I had seen the signs before he even realized he was giving them. The late-night gym sessions, the sudden obsession with looking younger, the secret phone calls, the unexplained credit card charges. He thought he was being clever, that I was too busy with my thriving practice to notice. But I noticed everything. 6 months ago, I had already started planning. The first step? Moving all my personal savings into a separate account. The second? Restructuring the legal ownership of my business to ensure that it remained entirely mine. And the third? Hiring a private investigator to confirm what I already suspected. Ryan wasn't just leaving me, he had been siphoning money for months, preparing for his grand escape with a woman half his age. I reached into my clutch, pulling out my own envelope, nearly identical to the one he had placed before me. With slow precision, I slid it across the table toward him. He frowned, his confidence flickering as he hesitated before picking it up. The moment he opened it, his entire demeanor shifted. This wasn't just divorce papers. It was evidence. Photographs. Bank statements. Receipts from lavish dinners and hotel stays under fake names. Screenshots of his messages, where he so arrogantly detailed his plans. His fingers tightened around the pages, his face paling as he flipped through the neatly documented proof of his deception. I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice just enough so that only he could hear. You wanted to blindside me, Ryan? You should have known better. His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard, his hands gripping the evidence of his own downfall. He had walked into this night expecting to humiliate me, expecting to control the narrative. Instead, he had walked straight into his own trap. And the best part? I wasn't done yet. Ryan's fingers trembled slightly as he turned the pages, his once smug expression now replaced with something far more satisfying, panic. I watched as his eyes darted across the documents, absorbing every damning piece of evidence laid out before him. The hotel receipts, the credit card statements, the flight bookings, all linked to her. He knew exactly who I was referring to. Emma Hayes. The 22-year-old personal trainer he had been sneaking around with for months. The girl who was naive enough to believe she was special, that he would leave his wife and take her on some fantasy escape to Miami. Too bad reality wasn't as kind. Ryan let out a sharp exhale, crumpling the edges of the papers in his grip as if that would make them disappear. He leaned in, lowering his voice, his fake composure cracking. Olivia, where did you get this? I took my time, picking up my wine glass again, swirling the liquid inside before answering. Oh, you know, Ryan. When you spend years working in surgery, you develop a keen eye for detail. I met his gaze, unblinking. You really thought I wouldn't notice the late-night gym sessions? The sudden changes in your spending habits? The way you started locking your phone like a teenager hiding secrets? I set the glass down with a quiet clink. You underestimated me. And that's your biggest mistake. His nostrils flared as he glanced around, suddenly hyper-aware of the murmurs rippling through the room. People were still watching, their eyes flicking between us like they were witnessing a scene straight out of a movie. And in a way, they were. Except this wasn't scripted. This was his downfall, unfolding in real time. Ryan leaned in closer, lowering his voice further. We don't have to do this here, he hissed through clenched teeth. I tilted my head, pretending to consider his request. Then I smiled. Oh, but you started this here, remember? My voice was smooth, calculated. You wanted an audience. You wanted to make a statement. So let's not stop now. His jaw clenched, his fingers gripping the papers so tightly his knuckles turned white. For the first time tonight, he was the one losing control. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling softly. You see, Ryan, I was never going to let you take anything from me. While you were busy sneaking around, thinking you were playing some clever game, I was making sure you walked away with nothing. I crossed my arms, watching him shift uncomfortably. You wanted freedom? You got it. But don't expect to take my money with you. His breath came heavier now, his carefully crafted plan unraveling before his eyes. He knew what this meant. No money. No easy escape. No fresh start with his new little distraction. Just the consequences of his own arrogance. I pulled out my phone, tapping the screen a few times before holding it up. Oh, and one last thing. I turned the screen toward him, displaying an email from my lawyer. Your access to our joint accounts? Revoked. Your name on any financial assets? Removed. That Miami getaway you were so looking forward to? I let the question hang for a moment, savoring his reaction. Cancelled. Ryan's face drained of color. His lips parted slightly as if he wanted to say something, but no words came out. He was still processing the fact that he had not just lost the upper hand, he had never even had it to begin with. And I wasn't done yet. Ryan's breathing had turned shallow, his once self-assured demeanor now unraveling with every passing second. His grip on the papers tightened as if he could somehow will them out of existence. I could see it, the moment realization truly hit him. He hadn't blindsided me. I had blindsided him. Still, the man was stubborn. He straightened his shoulders, attempting to salvage what little pride he had left. Olivia, let's be reasonable, he said, voice forced into a low, placating tone. We can still work something out. I never meant for things to get ugly. I let out a soft laugh, shaking my head. Oh, Ryan. Things have been ugly for a long time. You just didn't notice because you were too busy lying to yourself. I reached for my clutch, pulling out another document, one I had been waiting for the perfect moment to reveal. With deliberate slowness, I unfolded it and placed it on top of the divorce papers in front of him. Here. Since you're so eager to settle things tonight, you might as well see this too. Ryan hesitated before picking it up, scanning the contents. And then, the final blow landed. His eyes widened. His hands trembled. His entire body stiffened like he had just been punched in the gut. It was a court motion, a legal filing from my lawyer requesting an emergency freeze on all shared assets due to financial misconduct. Attached were records of his unauthorized transactions, evidence that he had siphoned money from our accounts under false pretenses. With my lawyer's precision, everything had been documented down to the last cent. The airline tickets. The hotel stays. The expensive gifts. Even the wire transfer to Emma's so-called business account, which, unsurprisingly, led back to nothing more than a Venmo ID. Ryan's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. His finger skimmed over the last paragraph, where it was made clear, if he didn't return the funds, he would face formal legal action. The blood drained from his face. His lips parted slightly as if he wanted to protest, to argue, to beg, but there was nothing left to say. I exhaled, feigning sympathy. Oh, and before you even think about trying to access our accounts again, don't bother. I gestured toward my phone. The emergency freeze is already in effect. That means your personal accounts are next, Ryan. I imagine that'll be a problem since, well, I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice just enough so only he could hear. I know your credit cards are maxed out. He flinched. I saw the way his throat tightened, how his hands twitched slightly at his sides. He knew I was right. Ryan had been living beyond his means for months, spending recklessly on a lifestyle he couldn't afford without me. And now? He had nothing. The tension in the room was suffocating. Guests were shifting uncomfortably in their seats, whispering amongst themselves. A few of them had discreetly put away their phones, sensing that they were no longer watching a spectacle but a complete and utter destruction. Then, just when I thought Ryan couldn't look more humiliated, his phone buzzed on the table. A message. The screen lit up. And from where I was sitting, I caught the first few words of the preview. Emma, hey babe, what's going on? The hotel says our reservation was cancelled. A deep, unbearable silence settled between us. Ryan's jaw tightened. His entire body tensed. For the first time, his mask of composure completely shattered. I simply smiled, leaning back into my chair, sipping the last of my wine. Looks like you've got some explaining to do. Ryan's fingers twitched as he reached for his phone, flipping it over so the screen faced down, as if that could somehow erase what had just happened. His eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape, but there was none. The guests were still watching, still murmuring, their hushed voices carrying through the air like static. Some looked uncomfortable, others fascinated. A few, I was sure, were reveling in the drama unfolding before them. He swallowed hard, shifting in his seat. Olivia, he started, his voice strained, this is a mistake. We don't have to do this here. I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. Oh? But wasn't that your plan? To do this here, in front of everyone? To embarrass me? I folded my hands neatly in my lap. You wanted a spectacle, Ryan. You got one. Just, not quite the way you imagined, I'm guessing. His nostrils flared. You're making a scene, he hissed, voice dropping so only I could hear. I let out a soft, amused sigh. No, Ryan. You made a scene when you thought you were the one in control. I could see the frustration building beneath his carefully crafted exterior, the way his jaw clenched, the tension in his shoulders. He wasn't used to this, to losing. To being exposed in front of an audience. The restaurant staff, sensing the shift in atmosphere, had subtly stepped back, leaving us alone in our little war zone. No one wanted to interfere. Not when things had become this deliciously messy. Then, his phone buzzed again. A second message. Another reminder that his perfect little plan was crumbling right before his eyes. He didn't reach for it this time. Instead, he exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through his hair before fixing me with a look that was meant to be stern, but there was fear behind it now. He was scrambling. Desperate. Trying to salvage what little dignity he had left. Olivia, let's be rational, he said, forcing his voice into something resembling calm. I don't want this to turn ugly. I let out a soft chuckle, shaking my head. Oh, Ryan. It's already ugly. The difference is, I just don't lose sleep over it. His hands curled into fists against the table. I could practically see the gears turning in his head, searching for a way to regain control. But there was none. Because I had planned for everything. And then, just as I was about to deliver the final blow, his mother's name flashed across my phone screen. I smirked, holding up the phone just enough for Ryan to see. His face paled. He knew exactly why she was calling. She must have heard, I mused, pretending to contemplate whether or not I should answer. Word travels fast, doesn't it? I glanced up at him. I wonder what she'll think when she finds out what you've been up to. Ryan stiffened. Don't bring my family into this. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, but it's okay when you tell them I was the problem? That I was controlling? Cold? Unloving? I let the words sink in, watching as his expression darkened. You've already fed them your version of the story, Ryan. Let's see how they feel after hearing mine. The phone buzzed again. I let it go to voicemail. I had no interest in talking to his mother. Not now. Not ever again. Ryan's breathing was heavier now, his face flushed with frustration, embarrassment, and something else, realization. He had lost. There was no fixing this, no twisting the narrative, no crawling his way out of the hole he had dug for himself. He had spent months crafting his escape plan, carefully setting the stage for his fresh start. But in his arrogance, he had overlooked the one thing that mattered most. I was already 10 steps ahead. And I wasn't done watching him crumble. Ryan's hands curled into fists on the table, his once confident posture now rigid with frustration. He was unraveling, and I could feel the heat of his humiliation radiating off him. His mind was scrambling for a way out, for any sliver of control he could cling to, but there was nothing left to hold on to. The weight of silence pressed down on him. I could see it, the realization settling in that this wasn't just a temporary setback. This was the end. Not the clean break he had envisioned, where he walked away unscathed with half of my assets and a young, naive woman clinging to his arm. No, this was his downfall, unfolding in real time. Ryan's mother had stopped calling, but now his sister, Amanda, was texting me. "Amanda, Olivia, is this true?" I glanced up at Ryan, my lips curling into a small smile as I tilted my phone just enough for him to see the message. His jaw tightened. He knew exactly what it meant. The moment his family got involved, the entire facade he had built, the lies he had spun to justify his actions, would start to collapse. "You told them I was the villain," I murmured, slipping my phone back into my clutch. "That I was cold. Controlling. Unloving." I tapped my fingers idly against the table. "I wonder how they'll feel after seeing the evidence." Ryan sucked in a sharp breath through his nose. He was barely keeping it together now, but he was still trying, desperately clinging to the last shreds of his pride. And then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife a little deeper, the restaurant manager approached our table. "Mr. Carter?" The man's voice was professional, but there was something else behind it, a quiet satisfaction. "I apologize for the interruption, but it seems your credit card has been declined." I bit back a laugh. Perfect timing. Ryan's entire body tensed. He blinked, caught completely off guard. "What?" The manager remained calm, his hands folded neatly in front of him. "Your card was used to secure tonight's reservation, but when we attempted to process the payment, it was declined." He paused. "Would you like to provide another form of payment?" The restaurant had been reserved under Ryan's name. He had planned this as his moment. His triumph. He had probably envisioned me sitting here, humiliated and blindsided, while he basked in the glow of his new freedom. And yet, here we were, the entire night backfiring in the most spectacular way. I leaned forward slightly, resting my chin on my hand. "Oh, Ryan," I said sweetly. "Did you forget? I removed you as an authorized user on our accounts." His lips parted slightly, as if the words had physically knocked the wind out of him. The manager, sensing the tension, cleared his throat. "Mrs. Carter, would you like us to transfer the bill to you?" I smiled, standing up and grabbing my clutch. "Oh no, that won't be necessary." I turned to Ryan. "I'm sure my soon-to-be ex-husband can figure it out." Ryan shot me a glare, but it lacked its usual fire. He was a man defeated. A man who had played the game and lost spectacularly. I stepped away from the table, feeling the weight of every eye in the restaurant on me. The whispers were louder now, the murmurs of a story that would spread like wildfire. And as I walked toward the exit, I allowed myself one final glance back. Ryan was still sitting there, his hands gripping the divorce papers and financial records I had handed him, his face pale, his breathing uneven. His perfect plan lay in ruins before him. And I had never felt lighter. The cold night air hit my skin as I stepped outside the restaurant, but the satisfaction burning in my chest kept me warm. I could still hear the hushed murmurs from inside, feel the weight of dozens of eyes watching me walk away, not as a broken woman, not as a victim, but as someone who had just won a war before her opponent even realized the battle had begun. I took my time slipping into the waiting town car, crossing my legs as I pulled out my phone. I had one last loose end to tie up. Ryan had spent months weaving his lies, convincing his family, his friends, even himself that I was the problem. That I was distant, controlling, too caught up in my career to appreciate him. And I had let him, because why argue when I knew the truth would reveal itself in the end? Now, the truth was out, and the people he had manipulated were beginning to see him for what he truly was. My notifications were lighting up, calls from mutual friends, text messages from his sister, but the one that truly made me smirk was from Emma. "Emma, Ryan isn't answering me. What's going on?" I stared at the message for a long moment, debating whether or not I should respond. A part of me almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the hotel reservations, the expensive dinners, the smug little smile she gave me the one time we met at his gym, before she realized I knew exactly who she was. So instead of a reply, I did something better. I took a screenshot of Ryan's financial records, the ones proving he had drained his accounts dry for her, and sent it to her without a single word. The moment the message showed as read, my phone buzzed violently with an incoming call from her. I let it ring. Then another. And another. I let them all go to voicemail, a small smile tugging at my lips. Let her panic. Let her realize that Ryan Carter was not the Prince Charming she thought he was, but a desperate, broke, washed-up man who had just lost everything. The car pulled into my driveway, the soft glow of my home's exterior lights greeting me. My house, the one Ryan had repeatedly asked me to put his name on, as if I were that naive. The one I had inherited from my grandmother, kept in my name only, despite his subtle, persistent suggestions over the years. Another thing he had failed to steal from me. Stepping inside, I inhaled deeply, feeling an unfamiliar sensation settle over me. Peace. Not relief, because I had never been afraid of losing him. Not sadness, because I had mourned the loss of our marriage long before tonight. Just peace. I poured myself a glass of wine, the expensive kind Ryan always insisted was a waste of money. A special occasion bottle. And if this didn't qualify as a celebration, I didn't know what did. As I settled onto the couch, my phone buzzed one last time. "Ryan, you think you're so smart, but you're going to regret this. Half of your business is mine, and I'll make sure you pay for what you did tonight." I sighed, taking another sip of wine before forwarding the message to my lawyer. Let him dig his grave deeper. He had already lost everything, but if he wanted to drag himself further into legal ruin, I wasn't going to stop him. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply being prepared. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of messages. Some from mutual friends, some from people who had been at the restaurant last night, and, of course, several from Ryan. I ignored all of them, except for one, a text from my lawyer. "Natalie, attorney, emergency hearing scheduled for Monday. Given his admission of financial misconduct in writing, we have a strong case to freeze any remaining joint assets. Expect him to fight back, but don't worry, I have everything covered." I smirked, stretching lazily as I set my phone down. Ryan thought he could play dirty, but he had no idea how airtight my preparations were. By noon, the first wave of Ryan's desperation hit. "Ryan, you think you're so clever, Olivia, but you won't get away with this. Half of your business is mine. I have records of everything." I rolled my eyes. He was grasping at straws now. My business, the one he had dismissed for years as my little side project, was structured so securely that not even a team of corporate sharks could argue for his ownership. But he didn't stop there. 2 hours later, my assistant knocked on my office door, holding her phone out hesitantly. Ryan's sister is on the line," she said, brows raised. "She says it's urgent." I exhaled, considering for a moment before nodding. "Put her through." Amanda's voice crackled over the speaker. "Olivia, she sighed. "I don't even know what to say. Ryan called our mom this morning, freaking out. He's claiming you stole everything from him." But then we saw the texts. The credit card charges. The Miami hotel reservation. Her voice grew tight. He's blaming you, but we know better now. I didn't reply immediately. This was exactly what Ryan had feared. He had spent months feeding them lies, convincing them that I was the problem, the cold and distant wife who drove him into the arms of someone else. And now? The truth had unraveled before them. He's running out of options, I finally said, leaning back in my chair. And he knows it. Amanda hesitated before speaking again. Look. I know we weren't fair to you at first. I believed what he told us. But now, seeing how he treated you, how he tried to take everything, she sighed heavily. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. You didn't deserve this. I didn't need their apologies. But it was nice to hear. Before I could respond, my assistant peeked her head in again. You might want to check your email, she said, eyes widening slightly. It's from Natalie. I pulled up my inbox and scanned the message. Then I laughed. Ryan had officially petitioned the court to revisit the financial division in our divorce. He was trying to claim partial ownership of my business. And the judge dismissed his request immediately. As per the ruling, Ryan was ordered to pay back every cent he had siphoned from our joint account. Money that, of course, he no longer had. He had spent it all on Emma. I smirked, replying to Amanda before ending the call. Tell your brother good luck figuring that out. Because I was done playing games. Monday morning arrived with crisp winter air and the distant hum of New York traffic. I stepped out of my car, smoothing my tailored coat as I approached the courthouse. The emergency hearing was set, and I was more than ready. Inside, I spotted Ryan immediately. He was standing near the entrance, shifting uncomfortably in his ill-fitted blazer. The designer wardrobe he had once flaunted was gone, most likely returned in a desperate attempt to recover some cash. His lawyer, a man who looked as if he had been hired at the last possible second, was speaking to him in hushed tones. Ryan's eyes snapped to me as I walked in, his expression darkening. Good. Let him stew. I took my seat beside my lawyer, Natalie, who greeted me with her usual poised confidence. This should be quick, she murmured, sliding a neatly compiled folder of documents toward me. He's attempting to claim a share of your business, but we've got clear-cut proof that he had no financial stake in it. I nodded, flipping through the pages. And the stolen funds? Already addressed in the filing, she replied smoothly. The judge won't be pleased. As if on cue, the courtroom doors opened, and we were called forward. The hearing was as predictable as I had anticipated. Ryan's lawyer tried to paint the narrative that my business had grown during our marriage, therefore entitling Ryan to a portion of it. Natalie shut that down in seconds. Your Honor, she said, her voice steady, we have clear financial records showing that Dr. Carter's business was established before the marriage and that she has maintained strict separation of business and personal finances throughout. The judge barely looked impressed by Ryan's argument. He glanced down at the records, flipping a page before turning his gaze to Ryan. Mr. Carter, his voice was firm, unimpressed, you admitted via text message to deliberately emptying a joint account and using shared credit cards to fund personal travel. Do you deny this? Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I was just trying to make a clean break, the judge cut in, raising a brow. By committing financial misconduct? Silence. I watched as Ryan squirmed, his arrogance rapidly dissolving. The judge exhaled, closing the file before him. The court finds sufficient evidence of financial misconduct, he declared. All shared assets are frozen pending the final dissolution. Additionally, Mr. Carter is ordered to return any funds removed from joint accounts within 24 hours. Ryan's head jerked up. That money's gone, he blurted. I spent it on. He cut himself off too late. The judge didn't even look up as he gathered his papers. Then I suggest you find a way to replace it. Ryan sat back, stunned. He had played this all wrong. He had expected me to beg, to crumble under the weight of his betrayal. Instead, he had destroyed himself. I rose from my seat, smoothing my coat. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of Emma, standing outside the courthouse. She looked different. The bright, eager girl I had seen months ago at his gym was gone. In her place was someone who had learned a hard lesson. As I passed her, she hesitated before speaking. I owe you an apology, she murmured, voice quieter than I had ever heard it. I believed everything he told me. That you were cold. Controlling. She exhaled, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Then I watched him try the same manipulation on me. I studied her for a moment, then simply said, he wasn't looking for love, Emma. He was looking for a way to escape responsibility. She nodded, biting her lip. Yeah. I see that now. And then, just like Ryan, she was left standing alone. I stepped outside, the cold air filling my lungs as the weight of this chapter finally lifted. Ryan had lost. And I had never been stronger. A month after the hearing, Ryan's downfall was no longer whispered gossip, it was public knowledge. News of the court ruling had spread through our social circles like wildfire. He had lost everything, his financial stability, his reputation, his relationship. And the best part? He had done it all to himself. He tried applying for jobs, but the university quietly let him go after the scandal became too big to ignore. His colleagues distanced themselves. His family, the same people who once believed his lies about me, stopped taking his calls. Even Emma was gone. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard that she had moved on to a coworker her own age, leaving Ryan to fend for himself. He was now crashing on his mother's couch, drowning in legal debt, and struggling to figure out what had gone so horribly wrong. Meanwhile, I was flourishing. My business had never been better. The boutique clinics I had built from the ground up were expanding, and my latest opening had been covered in a major business magazine, not as Ryan Carter's ex-wife, but as a powerhouse entrepreneur who had protected her empire. One evening, as I was preparing to leave my office, my assistant knocked hesitantly on my door. "There's a letter," she said, setting a sealed envelope on my desk. "From him. Ryan." I stared at it for a long moment before finally opening it. The letter was short. Pitiful. A desperate attempt to rewrite the past. "Olivia, I never meant for things to end like this. I made mistakes, but I never stopped caring about you. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I exhaled, setting the paper aside. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I turned to my office wall, where a single framed screenshot hung. Ryan's last arrogant text before his world collapsed. "Have fun with your little shop. At least it'll keep you busy in your old age." Below it, in sharp contrast, sat my latest business award. Proof that sometimes, revenge isn't loud. It isn't cruel. It isn't even intentional. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply winning.